His fist connected with my stomach, and I couldn't breathe. Harold was dragging me across the bathroom floor by my hair, my broken finger throbbing with every movement. I was screaming, begging him to stop. But what he didn't know was that the handsome stranger from table 7 had just walked in. Before I tell you how I went from being beaten on a bathroom floor to becoming something I never imagined, I need you to stay with me through this entire story. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this journey has twists you won't see coming, romance you'll root for, and revenge that'll make you cheer. Ring that bell icon because you do not want to miss what happens next. Now let me take you back to the worst night of my life, the night that changed everything. My name is Mia, and I want to tell you about the night I thought I was going to die on a restaurant bathroom floor. But first, you need to understand what my life was like before that moment. I was 24 years old, working at the Golden Pearl, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Sounds glamorous, right? It wasn't. Not for people like me. I was a waitress, which meant I was invisible to most of the customers who walked through those doors. I wore a cream-colored uniform that I washed in my sink every single night because I couldn't afford to buy a second one. The fabric was worn thin, and there were stains that wouldn't come out no matter how hard I scrubbed, but it was all I had. I was a single mother to my 3-year-old daughter, Sophie. Her father had left when I was pregnant, and I hadn't heard from him since. It was just me and her against the world, living in a tiny apartment where the heat barely worked in winter and the air conditioning didn't work at all in summer. Some nights, Sophie would go to bed hungry because I had to choose between feeding her properly or paying the electric bill. I always chose the bill because I couldn't let my baby sleep in the dark. I worked 14-hour shifts, 6 days a week. My feet would throb so badly by the end of each night that I could barely walk to the bus stop. But I never complained. I couldn't. I needed this job desperately. Jobs like this didn't come easy for someone like me. No college degree, no connections, just a young mother trying to survive. And then there was Harold. Harold was the restaurant manager, and he was a monster dressed in expensive suits. He was 38 years old, handsome in a conventional way, and he knew it. He'd been the manager for 6 years, and he ruled that restaurant like it was his personal kingdom. To the customers, he was charming and attentive, but to the staff, he was our worst nightmare. Harold didn't just yell at us. He pushed us, shoved us, grabbed us hard enough to leave bruises. I'd seen him make 2 waitresses cry so hard they quit without even collecting their final paychecks. He seemed to enjoy it. The power, the fear in our eyes, the way we all walked on eggshells around him. But for some reason, I was his favorite target. Maybe it was because I was quiet and never fought back. Maybe it was because he knew I was desperate and couldn't afford to lose this job. Or maybe it was something darker, the way his eyes would linger on me too long, the way his hand would accidentally brush against me when he walked past, the comments he'd make about my body when no one else was listening. I felt trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. Every day I thought about quitting, but then I'd think about Sophie. How would I pay rent? How would I feed her? So I stayed, and I endured, and I told myself that someday things would get better. That night started like any other Friday evening. The restaurant was packed with wealthy customers, businessmen celebrating deals, couples on expensive dates, groups of friends who wouldn't think twice about spending $500 on dinner. I was moving between tables, taking orders, serving food, refilling wine glasses, always smiling even though my face hurt from holding the expression. And then he walked in. I noticed him immediately because everyone did. He was stunning, late 20s, tall, with dark hair and these intense eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore a white suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, and he moved with this quiet confidence that made people naturally step aside for him. But there was something different about him, something I couldn't quite place. While other customers barely glanced at the staff, this man was observing everything carefully. The way the hostess greeted guests, how the waiters moved through the room, the atmosphere of the entire place. He sat alone at table 7 in the corner, and when the hostess assigned him to my section, my heart did this strange little flutter. I walked over with my notepad, ready to recite the specials, but before I could speak, he smiled at me. Not the polite, dismissive smile most customers gave, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Hi," he said warmly. "What's your name?" I was so surprised that someone was asking my name that I almost forgot to answer. "Mia," I finally managed. "Mia," he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I'm Adrian. It's nice to meet you." No customer had ever introduced themselves to me before. I felt that flutter again, stronger this time, but I pushed it down. Men like him didn't notice women like me, not really. I took his order, brought his food, and every time I approached his table, he thanked me sincerely. He asked me how long I'd worked there, if I liked it, little questions that made me feel like an actual human being instead of just a uniform. I didn't know then that his name wasn't really Adrian Stevens, like his reservation said. I didn't know that he was Adrian Pierce, the 29-year-old billionaire who had just inherited his father's restaurant empire 6 months ago. I didn't know that he made a habit of visiting his properties undercover, observing how they really operated when no one knew the owner was watching. All I knew was that for the first time in months, someone had treated me with basic kindness, and it made me want to cry. But Harold noticed. Of course Harold noticed. I saw him across the restaurant, his face darkening as he watched Adrian smile at me. I saw the jealousy flash in his eyes, saw the way his jaw clenched. My stomach dropped because I knew that look. I knew what was coming. For the next hour, Harold watched me like a hawk, waiting for any mistake, any excuse to punish me. I was so nervous that my hands started shaking. And that's when it happened. I was refilling water glasses at a nearby table when Harold deliberately walked into my path. I didn't see him coming, and I crashed right into him. The tray I was carrying tilted, and 3 expensive wine glasses tumbled to the floor. The sound of shattering crystal echoed through the entire restaurant like a gunshot. Everything stopped. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Every head turned to look at me. I stood there frozen, staring at the broken glass and the spreading pool of wine on the polished floor, and I felt my entire world crumbling around me. Harold's face turned purple with rage. "You stupid, worthless piece of trash!" he screamed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Before I could even apologize, he grabbed my arm and twisted it violently behind my back. Pain shot through my shoulder and I cried out, "You'll pay for every single glass!" Tears sprang to my eyes, but I tried to blink them back. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Please, Harold, I'm sorry." "Get on your knees and pick it up," he snarled, forcing me down. My knees hit the hard floor, and I could feel dozens of eyes on me. The humiliation was worse than the pain. I started picking up pieces of broken glass with trembling hands, and within seconds, I'd cut my fingers. Blood mixed with wine on the floor, but I didn't dare stop. From the corner of my eye, I saw Adrian stand up from table 7. He was watching intently, his expression dark and unreadable. Harold yanked me up by my hair. I gasped in pain, my scalp burning. "We're going to have a conversation in private," he hissed in my ear. "Come with me. Now." He started dragging me toward the staff bathroom by my hair. I was stumbling, crying, trying to keep up so he wouldn't pull harder. "Please, Harold, please! I need this job. I'm sorry." He didn't respond. He just dragged me through the kitchen, past the other staff members who quickly looked away. They'd learned long ago that interfering with Harold only made things worse, and into the small staff bathroom at the back of the restaurant. He shoved me inside so hard that I slammed into the sink, and then he locked the door behind us. The sound of that lock clicking still haunts my dreams. "You think you can embarrass me?" Harold's voice was quiet now, which was somehow more terrifying than the yelling. "Make me look bad in front of customers? Flirt with that man at table 7? I wasn't flirting. I was just doing my job." His hand connected with my face so hard that stars exploded in my vision. I tasted blood immediately, felt my lips split open. I would have fallen if the sink hadn't been there to catch me. "Don't you dare lie to me," he said. His voice was eerily calm now, which made everything worse. He grabbed my hand, my right hand, the one I'd cut on the glass, and held it up. "You know what? Let me teach you a lesson about breaking things." I knew what he was going to do a second before he did it. No, please, Harold, please don't. He bent my index finger backward. I heard the snap before I felt the pain, and then the pain hit, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced. White-hot agony shot up my arm, and I screamed. I screamed so loud that I was sure the entire restaurant could hear me, but no one came. No one ever came when Harold took someone to that bathroom. My legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor, cradling my broken finger against my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except sob. But Harold wasn't done. He kicked me in the stomach and all the air left my lungs. I was gasping like a fish, lying on the cold tile floor, vision going dark around the edges. "You're nothing," Harold said, standing over me. "Your daughter will starve on the streets because you're worthless. You'll come back tomorrow and apologize to every single customer. You'll work for free for a month to pay for those glasses. And if you tell anyone about this, if you breathe one word, I'll make sure you never work anywhere in this city again. Do you understand me?" I couldn't answer. I was still trying to breathe, still trying to process the fact that my finger was broken and my stomach felt like it was on fire and I was bleeding and I couldn't do anything about it because I needed this job. I needed it for Sophie. The bathroom door suddenly swung open. I thought maybe I was hallucinating from the pain, because standing in the doorway, backlit by the harsh kitchen lights, was Adrian, the handsome stranger from table 7. But he didn't look kind anymore. His face was cold fury, his eyes dark with rage, his entire body radiating danger. "Step away from her," he said, and his voice was quiet, but carried so much authority that it made the air feel heavy. "Right now." Harold turned, and for a second he looked annoyed rather than afraid. "This is staff business. Get out before I have security remove you." Adrian didn't move. I said, "Step away from her." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Harold puffed up his chest, trying to look intimidating. Adrian's voice dropped even lower, became even more dangerous. "I'm Adrian Pierce, and I own this restaurant." I watched Harold's face go completely white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Mr. Pierce," he stammered. This isn't." "Save it!" Adrian walked past Harold like he wasn't even there and knelt beside me on the bathroom floor. His expression softened when he looked at me. "Let me see your hand," he said gently. I held it out with my good hand, and he examined my broken finger carefully. His jaw clenched when he saw it, saw the unnatural angle, the swelling already starting. Then his eyes traveled to my bleeding lip, the bruises forming on my face, the cuts on my hands from the glass, the way I was still struggling to breathe from the kick to my stomach. "Did he do all of this?" Adrian asked, and even though his voice was gentle with me, I could hear the rage underneath. I nodded, unable to speak. Adrian stood slowly, and when he turned to face Harold, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Get on your knees," he said. "Mr. Pierce, please, let me explain." I said, "Get on your knees." Harold dropped, and I saw something I never thought I'd see, tears in his eyes. "Please, Mr. Pierce." She broke expensive glasses. I was just maintaining discipline. The previous owner said we had to be strict with staff. "The previous owner was my father," Adrian interrupted coldly. "He died 6 months ago. I'm in charge now, and everything is about to change." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Security. Staff bathroom. Now. Also, call the police. I need to report an assault." "No!" Harold's voice cracked. "Please! I'll lose everything." "You should have thought about that," Adrian said, "before you broke her finger." Security arrived within minutes, 2 large men who blocked the bathroom door. But Adrian wasn't done. He pulled up something on his phone and started playing videos, security camera footage from the restaurant, and as I watched from the floor, still cradling my broken hand, I saw months of Harold's abuse play out in grainy black and white. There was Harold hitting a young waiter across the back of the head, Harold shoving a hostess into a wall, Harold cornering a female server in the storage room, getting too close, touching her inappropriately, Harold stealing money from the register, Harold doing the same thing to other employees that he'd just done to me, taking them to private areas, hurting them, threatening them. Each video made Adrian's expression darker. "Before I decide your final punishment," Adrian said when the videos ended, "I want everyone who this man has hurt to come forward." Word spread through the restaurant quickly. Within minutes, 5 employees stood in the kitchen outside the bathroom. A waiter showed cigarette burns on his arm. Harold had done that. A hostess described sexual harassment that had gone on for months. A line cook talked about being forced to work 20-hour shifts without breaks or overtime pay. Another waitress revealed that Harold had hit her so hard once that she'd had a concussion, but she'd been too afraid to report it. Each testimony made Harold sink lower, his face crumpling. "Call the police," Adrian told security. "I'm pressing charges for assault, battery, harassment, and theft. This man is done. Please." Harold was openly sobbing now. "I've worked here for 6 years. This job is my life. You can't—" "Watch me." But Adrian wasn't satisfied with just firing him. He made Harold stand in the main dining room of the restaurant in front of all the customers who were still there. And in front of everyone, Adrian announced what had happened. "This man abused his power," Adrian said, his voice carrying through the entire restaurant. "He hurt innocent people who worked for him. He broke this woman's finger because she accidentally dropped some glasses. I'm pressing criminal charges, and I want all of you to know that this is what happens when you abuse people in my establishments." Some customers looked shocked. Others pulled out their phones, recording. Harold stood there, handcuffed by the police who had just arrived, tears streaming down his face, his entire world crumbling in front of an audience. As they led him toward the exit, Harold turned and screamed at me, "This is your fault! You ruined my life! Adrian stepped directly in front of me, blocking Harold's view. "If you so much as think about her again," Adrian said quietly, "I will destroy you in ways you can't even imagine. Now get out of my restaurant." After Harold was gone, after the police had taken statements, after the other customers had slowly filtered out, Adrian turned his attention back to me. I was still on the bathroom floor, shock setting in, my whole body starting to shake. "We're going to the hospital," Adrian said. It wasn't a question. "I can't afford— I'm paying for everything." He helped me up carefully, and when my legs wobbled, he simply picked me up and carried me out of the restaurant. His car was luxury I'd only ever seen in movies. Soft leather seats, that new car smell, so clean and perfect that I was afraid my bloody uniform would stain it. "Don't worry about the seats," Adrian said, reading my mind as he buckled me in. "Just focus on breathing." At the hospital, he stayed with me through everything. When they x-rayed my hand and found not just the fresh break, but old injuries, fractures that had healed wrong, damage from previous abuse, the doctor looked at me with such concern that I finally broke down and told them everything. Months of Harold's cruelty poured out of me, and Adrian sat there holding my good hand, his face getting darker with every word. They cast my finger, gave me pain medication, treated the cuts on my hands and the bruises on my face. Adrian paid for everything without blinking, including a full body scan to check for internal injuries from the kick to my stomach. As we sat in the hospital waiting room at 2 a.m, waiting for the final discharge papers, Adrian finally spoke. "You're not going back to that apartment tonight. I'm putting you in a hotel. Tomorrow we'll talk about the future." "I can't accept—" "Yes, you can." He looked at me, and his eyes were kind again, like when I'd first served him at table 7. "You survived something terrible with grace and strength. Let me help you." I was too exhausted to argue. The next morning, Adrian showed up at the hotel with breakfast and toys for Sophie. He'd arranged for my neighbor to bring her over. Watching this billionaire businessman sit on the hotel floor playing with my 3-year-old daughter, making her giggle, treating her like she mattered, made something crack open in my chest. "I want to offer you a position," Adrian said after Sophie had fallen asleep clutching a stuffed animal he'd brought her. "Director of Employee Relations for all my restaurants. Your job would be to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else ever again." I stared at him. "I'm a waitress. I don't have qualifications for—" "You have the most important qualification. You know what it's like to be powerless, and you survived it. That matters more than any business degree." He named a salary that made my head spin. $120,000 a year, plus full benefits, plus a company apartment, plus childcare for Sophie. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this for me?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Because I've spent my whole life in boardrooms with people who've never struggled a day in their lives. They make policies that affect workers, but they don't understand workers. You do. And because—" He paused. "Because when I saw you on that bathroom floor, something in me broke. No one should be treated that way. Ever. I inherited 50 restaurants from my father, and if they're all being run like that one was, then I need to fix it. I need someone like you to help me fix it." I said yes. Of course I said yes. The next 2 months were a whirlwind. Harold's trial became local news. Restaurant mogul takes down abusive manager. I testified, standing in front of a courtroom and holding up my scarred hand, telling my story. Other victims testified too. The waiter with the cigarette burns, the hostess he'd harassed, the people he'd stolen from. By the end, Harold was sentenced to 2 years in prison with restraining orders from all his victims. He lost his career, his reputation, his family, everything. I should have felt triumphant, but mostly I just felt tired and free. For the first time in years, I felt free. My new job was incredible. I worked with lawyers and HR professionals to implement new policies across all of Adrian's restaurants, anonymous reporting systems, mandatory respect training, better wages, mental health resources for staff. I visited each restaurant personally, talking to workers, listening to their stories, making changes. And through it all, Adrian was there. We worked late nights planning reforms. He made me laugh with stories about disastrous business meetings. He challenged my ideas, made me think deeper, treated me like an equal even though he was a billionaire and I'd been serving tables just months before. Somewhere along the way, without either of us planning it, we fell in love. It started small. His hand brushing mine when we both reached for the same document. The way his eyes would light up when I walked into a room. How he started finding excuses to stop by my office just to talk. The way I started dressing a little nicer for work, hoping he'd notice. One evening, after a particularly successful board meeting where we'd gotten approval to expand the worker protection program to 50 restaurants, Adrian asked me to dinner. "Not as your boss," he clarified quickly, looking almost nervous. "As someone who cares about you. A lot." I smiled, feeling that same flutter I'd felt when he first asked my name at table 7. "I'd like that." Our first date turned into a second, then a third. He met Sophie properly, and watching them together, this brilliant, powerful man getting down on his hands and knees to play tea party with my daughter, made me fall even harder. 6 months after that terrible night in the bathroom, my life was unrecognizable. I lived in a beautiful apartment. Sophie went to an excellent preschool where she was thriving. I ran employee welfare programs for 50 restaurants and was making a real difference. And I was in a relationship with a man who treated me like I was precious. But I never forgot where I came from. I started a foundation for workers escaping abusive employment situations, helping them find new jobs, get therapy, learn their legal rights. Several of Harold's other victims now worked in the foundation with me, helping others the way we wished someone had helped us. And then, on a Friday evening, exactly 1 year after the night my life changed, Adrian took me back to the Golden Pearl. The restaurant had been completely renovated, brighter, warmer, with photos of the staff displayed proudly on the walls and a mission statement about dignity and respect. He led me to table 7, where it all began. The table was set beautifully, with flowers and candles, and Adrian got down on one knee. "Mia," he said, and his voice was shaking slightly. "1 year ago, you walked into this restaurant broken, and somehow you taught me what real strength looks like. You've transformed my company, transformed my life, transformed me. I can't imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, I said yes. The staff erupted in applause. Sophie, who had been hiding behind the hostess stand, came running out yelling, "We're gonna be a family." So that's my story. That's how I went from a terrified waitress being beaten on a bathroom floor to a woman who's changing lives and found love along the way. That night when Harold broke my finger, I thought my life was over, but it wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Harold tried to break me, but he just revealed my strength, and the man who saved me. He became my partner, my love, my family. If this story gave you chills, if it made you believe that things can get better, please smash that like button and share this video with someone who needs hope today. Drop a comment below saying, "I am stronger than my circumstances." Let's build each other up, because that's what this story is really about. We're all stronger than we know. Subscribe for more stories of survival, transformation, and justice being served. Hit that bell so you never miss an upload. And remember, your darkest hour might just be setting you up for your greatest breakthrough. Never give up. Never let anyone make you believe you're worthless. You matter. You matter. Your story matters. Thank you for being part of my journey. I'll see you in the next video.